Hi everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you all to today's coloring and live session. We're going to be talking with Kate Zarrella, who is the creator behind the book, the new coloring book that CCB has just released called Color the Bard. And she's just joining now. And we're going to be showing some of the pages today and talking a little bit about the inspiration that Kate had and how she actually went ahead and made a coloring book for all of our enjoyments. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kirsten. Oh, and there we have.
Hello, am I on?
Hello. I'm so excited to be here and talking, and I kind of did a quick introduction, just that we're talking about Color the Bard, your new coloring book that's out. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and what you do with CCB, Calling Card Book?
Yeah, so I'm Kate, the creative director of Calling Card Books and Z Girls Press. Calling Card is our nonfiction imprint where we publish nonfiction books. And then Z Girls Press is where we publish fiction books and my coloring book series, Color Lit. So yeah, I do all our book design, build our website, and do a lot of the techie stuff. So I make our ebooks as well. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. And I think we decided that we're going to be coloring today. Live. We're going to do a live coloring session. Have you chosen your coloring page?
I have two options. I'm not sure exactly which one I'm going to do. So I made a little freebie coloring page for everyone. It's Elizabethan Christmas theme. So this is a picture of a Shakespeare era hall that's decorated for Christmas. So that is going to be in the link in our bios if you want to download that and color along with us. And then I also did one, this one's not in the coloring book, it's just a special one for the holidays. And I did print out one from the coloring book that's a quote from Much Ado About Nothing that's, "Let me be that I am and seek not to alter me." And I like that because I like sewing, so like it's an alteration joke in this image, but also a good sentiment to have. You don't want to be with someone who wants to change you too much. So
Yeah.
That's what I
life
think.
Lesson, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay. I think so. I've chosen two pages as well. And I chose one actually because I have a question for you. So I chose this one. So it's a quote from Henry IV. "Yet herein I will imitate the sun, who doth permit the base contagious clouds to smother up his beauty from the world." And then I chose also, so this one, the nautical themed one, because mostly I wanted to ask you what Shakespeare, how is this Shakespeare related?
Yeah, so for that one, it's kind of more of like generally the Elizabethan era, because that was like, not that we love Christopher Columbus, but that was the era of exploration, so there was a lot of that going on. But then also there are like Twelfth Night, there's a shipwreck in that. So we could say it's Twelfth Night themed.
Yeah.
But yeah, just generally, I thought that was kind of representative of the era. Though the morals of that are now highly questionable, but
well, and I guess they had like, what was it, the pirate that Queen Elizabeth always, Sir Francis Drake, is it?
Yeah.
That kind of, yeah, it was reminiscent of that a little bit as well. So that's fair. Oh.
Yeah.
The pages, I'm gonna start coloring anyways, but the pages are beautiful. How did you make them? I think like, cause you didn't hand draw them, right?
No, yeah, let me bring them back. I don't know if this will show on the screen. You'll have to let me know. Yeah, so I've always done digital artwork. Like I started off with Photoshop and I've gone along and learned how to do InDesign and Illustrator and all that. So they're kind of very technical tracings, I guess is the closest I can come. So it's all done with a mouse on a computer. But like this one is based on the first page in Shakespeare's folio, so it's based on a real engraving of him that's printed in like a collection of his works. So the text is digitized from that page, but then I hand illustrated the face of Shakespeare, and I'm pleased because it actually looks like a human. In my Jane Austen coloring book, she looked a little bit monstrous for a little bit. It took me a while to get her to look human, so um, but it's fun. I made pattern brushes for all of the really intricate detail. So that was a fun thing to learn how to do, and I think it turned out really well. And it's big enough to color, which was an important little touch I made sure to add.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of key.
Yeah. But I like try to do a variety of quotes that were just quotes that are kind of easy to color in,
Mm.
and like more detailed ones. Like this is a illustration I did. I visited Shakespeare's Globe while I was studying abroad in England back in 2012. So this is actually a picture I took of Shakespeare's Globe, and I spent a couple hours just hand outlining everything, and tried to get as much detail in there as I could because it's like just a phenomenally beautiful place, and I wanted to try and do that justice as much as I could.
That's amazing. So you kind of almost employed a few different techniques. Well, it does not almost. You employed a few different techniques between and
Yeah,
hand-drawn stuff to just get the right feel for each page.
absolutely. And I wanted to like try and keep a lot of detail in, but then like do it relatively quickly because we wanted it to be around for Christmas, for the holidays, to be a holiday gift. So like some of the things are patterns, like the railing here is a brush pattern I made, and so that's just a line, and I clicked that and turned it into like all of these fancy, wonderful shapes. So that was cool to learn how to do that. Um, yeah, here's another quote. Oh, this is another one I love. I almost printed this one off too because like I'm obsessed with historical dress, especially stuff from the Tudor era. So I love this like gown. They're actually a bunch of different pieces that you put together, and you can like take the sleeves off, and there's an overgown and an underskirt, sometimes an undergown. And even like the jewels on the neckline would have been detachable, so you could sew it onto different outfits. Um, so I love that, and I love the quote too. The "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" That's one of his more romantic sonnets.
Yeah. Oh,
Although,
that yeah, I think that's one of the more recognizable quotes from Shakespeare. So it's nice to have those because when I was looking through the book, like this one I'm painting, or well, I'm painting actually, not coloring, but I actually didn't know this quote, and I think it's really lovely. But I think it's nice to have that mix of like learning and some like the classic ones that you'd miss if it wasn't in a coloring book.
yeah, that's kind of what I was aiming for because I know there's like a handful. Like I did not add in to be or not to be in a very noticeable way. I'll show you where it is, but it's not like a full page one, and that's kind of like one of the most famous. Um, but I went to like a couple of Facebook groups that are people who are just obsessed with Shakespeare and asked them what their favorites were. Because I know I had a couple of my own favorites, but I wanted to make sure and put ones in there that people loved, and that was one of them. And I do love that one from that play because it's like he's at a point where he's kind of a playboy and he's talking about, well, if I act, even though I'm a prince, if I act like a playboy, when I do finally decide to become a leader, I'm going to shine so brightly like the sun coming out from behind clouds. So it's like trying to imply that his playboyness is, you know, something that he planned on doing to make himself seem more gloriously later, which is
Yeah, pull the old bait and switch, is it?
yeah, just set the expectations low so then you can like really blow them out of the water when you finally do try. It's like very clever, Henry.
I like that. I like that.
Um, yeah, I'll keep going through. Ooh, this is another fun one. This is Anne Hathaway's house. It is not Anne Hathaway, the modern actress, but Shakespeare's wife. This is her family's cottage. It's another one that I was able to go and see in person, and it is so beautiful.
Ooh.
I hope it's justice.
Where I actually, so I've been to the Globe, but I haven't been to Anne Hathaway's house. Whereabouts is that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's more in the countryside. I believe it's around Stratford upon Avon because that's where he was born, and that's where the house he was born in is. And I have that house in here as well somewhere. Yeah, but it's just in the countryside and so lovely and just like really super picturesque.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Um.
and
Mhm.
ooh, and here on this page, I mentioned earlier that the Hamlet quote "to be or not to be" is in here somewhere. It's actually written super tiny on these scrolls of paper. So I don't know if anyone is actually going to be able to read it printed out, but just know that is
That
Hamlet's most
yeah,
famous soliloquy on
the
there.
quote made it on into the book at least.
It did. It's like a little Easter egg.
Yeah, I love that.
So now everybody's in the know.
And what, so I know you just mentioned a little while ago that you had made the Jane Austen coloring book. What kind of inspired you to start this series? I mean, it's a very specific niche, like author themed coloring books. Did you have like any inspiration for that?
Yeah, so it was originally just kind of a learning exercise for me. We had a client a couple years ago who was a photographer and wanted to turn her photographs into line art to make a coloring book. And I had never used Illustrator at that point, so I was trying to learn how to do this sort of line art to like offer her the ability to turn her pictures into line art. Eventually, she ended up going with like fiber artists to do her coloring book, and I just laid it out. Actually, we did a couple of coloring books for her. So I just did the like layout, design, book cover creation portion of that for her. But that made me want to learn how to do it. So I went ahead and made a quick succession of Busy Nothings, which is the Jane Austen themed one, to teach myself how to do that and to like just know that I would be able to make a coloring book and make the illustrations. And so this one is kind of a mix of also text and a few images that I traced. Like this one, I mostly did by hand. But then there's also images that I just digitized that were from early versions of her books where she had, not she didn't have, but an illustrator would illustrate certain scenes from the various books of hers. So I just digitized them, simplified them a little bit so they'd be fun to color and added them in. But it's not, this one isn't quite as hand-drawn as Color the Bard. Like aside from the text, I did everything myself. I made all the patterns. I illustrated everything. So I was very pleased with myself and how much I progressed as a digital artist in that span of 2-3 years.
Yeah.
That was 2018 and this is published in 2020.
That's all, like, so it's just all self-taught and you just kind of had to learn the skill and we're like, okay, I'm doing this. That's a really cool way to learn.
Yeah, I've got to say, in this capacity, I did graduate from YouTube University. There was a lot of Googling and learning and trial and error, and that's one of the things that I love most about getting to be a part of Calling Card Books and Z Girls Press is that I do have the opportunity to learn all of these new skills and just take stuff and run with it. And I've been here 3-4 years, and my skills have just improved insanely. Like I didn't know how to make ebooks at the beginning, and now I can do all sorts of cool stuff with them.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Yeah. And can I ask, so it sounds like, because I think you made a reel the other day showing your process on one of the pages on like the suit of armor page.
Yeah.
And I think the reel probably made it look really, I don't want to say easy, but like a really simple process almost. But from talking, it sounds like maybe it's not as simple as the reel made it look. How long does it take on average for you to make these like one page?
Yeah, so it definitely depends. And here's the page that we're talking about. Like the rough outline doesn't take very long. I could say maybe I did the tracing of the outside stuff in maybe like a half hour.
Okay.
But then I had to create patterns that I like did all of these complex lines with, and that took a lot longer. And then like doing all the details, like all the little rivets. So this probably took closer to 2 or 3 hours. And then some of the really detailed ones, like the, let me see if I can find, oh, here's an outside of the globe. Actually, this one was pretty quick. But then Shakespeare's house took forever because there's like a ton of detail and ton of things that you have to do. Here we go. Here's Shakespeare's house, or Shakespeare's birthplace. So this took probably closer to 4 hours because there's so much detail in the house. And then I had to create patterns for the roof tiles, for the brick, for the lawn. All of these various leaves were all patterns that I had to create, and the window panes, and just certain things like changing the angle of the pattern to like line up with the way the roof line is going takes a bit of time and a bit of finagling, even though the pattern itself makes it quicker to do. There's still like a lot of angles and technical things that you have to think about to have it come out looking like a real house.
Yeah.
Um,
I could see that because I
yeah.
think they're like, I've seen like things outlined before, and I think you run the risk of like if a line goes into another line, then it looks like it all fades into one. So you kind of have to just adjust a little bit to make it like distinct, because I think we underestimate how simple like the straight up lines need to be sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like you do kind of have to break everything down into the basic shapes, at least when you're starting, and say like, oh, this is a square, this is a circle, this is a triangle, and then you just like kind of layer on the details until it gets to a point where it's really fun to illustrate, or not, really fun to color, but not really hard to color. Because sometimes if you add in too much detail, it can get like a little annoying. Like you either have to color in every leaf hand by hand, or just give up and kind of do it all one
Yeah,
color.
go across.
Yeah. So I tried to do like a variety of like some of them are really you have a ton of detail to play with, and some of them are a little bit more basic and will probably be quicker to do
Yeah.
as someone who's coloring. Yeah.
And have you always been a fan of coloring books? Are you a colorer in your spare time?
Um. Yeah. Not as much as you would think for someone who's made two coloring books, but it is a really good way to unwind, especially with like everything that's going on in the world right now. You do need those kind of meditative moments, and coloring is a really great way to do that, especially if you don't necessarily have artistic talent but you still want to like have that joy of being a little kid that's like getting to do art. um, Coloring books are a really fun way to kind of put your toe into the creative world and have a little bit of a creative outlet, because there's no wrong way to do it, and you can actually do some really beautiful things depending on how you decide to color it, and you can really make it your own. So it's a nice way to unplug and just like get away from the TV, get away from the news for a second, reconnect with yourself and kind of calm down. So
Yeah.
over the past few years, I've really gotten back into it with doing these guys. So it's fun. It's nice.
Yeah, I have definitely read a lot about how coloring books can be really like, I guess, zen, like put you in a zen, like almost meditative, and just be able to relax. So
Yeah, they're supposed to be like pretty good for your mental health, especially if you like have anxiety or a little bit more anxious, because it really, um, it's it is that like fine line of you have to focus on what you're doing, but it's also not necessarily something stressful unless you want to make it stressful. So it really can be a good way to come down and equalize your mood.
yeah,
In the research we did for Kate's first book, there was a very fascinating article by a therapist about the fact that art therapies is therapeutic, but coloring book therapy is non-threatening because it's childlike.
Yeah.
yeah. I could definitely see that, because I think with art there's like if you're actually having to make the art yourself and like do all the outlines, there's kind of this pressure for you to make it good, or like what are you making, and if what you're making is saying something about you or not saying something about you. Whereas with this, it's literally just you choose a color and you choose which area you would like to fill.
Yeah. And you can choose if you want to stay in the lines or draw outside them. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, in my case
Yeah.
probably outside the lines more than inside, but not on purpose.
Yeah. And it's been fun. Like I said, I haven't done much like drawing by hand or painting by hand, but I have a ton of watercolors and I've been using them to do these different coloring book pages. And that's such a fun way to like kind of non-threateningly get into it. I mean, I guess this one here, I tried to uh, paint the cover. So this one is done with marker, and that turned out pretty well. But the first one, I did it with watercolor. The paper really wasn't thick enough. I just printed it on printer paper. But I still like how it turned out, and it was fun getting to play around with watercolor because it's not something that I do every day.
Yeah, that's fair. Trying the different mediums can be really interesting.
Yeah, because you totally get
but sometimes I'm good.
yeah, you get totally different results if you're like using pencils versus pens versus watercolors, and you can do like whichever one you want with the coloring books.
Yeah.
We learned the books need to have 60-pound paper and not 50-pound paper so they don't bleed through.
Yeah.
Hey, that's interesting. And yeah, I suppose that's something that you don't really think about until you're looking to publish a book, and then you're kind of like, oh, how do we make that right?
Yeah. you got to kind of get into the nitty gritty of all those technical details.
Yeah. Another question. So I wanted to ask you, because I remember when your first coloring book came out, which was the Jane Austen, Quick Succession of Busy Nothings. And I loved the name for that. And I also love the name for this one, Color the Bard. How do you come up with the names? Is there a process that you have to make them on theme and witty, or is that just, they just come to you?
Yeah, it was kind of, we took two different routes with the different titles. So for Quick Succession of Busy Nothings, that's based on a Jane Austen quote. And I just really liked the sentiment of that and thought it went well for a coloring book, because like with life, we're always running around doing all these crazy things, but a lot of them are kind of not meaningless, but they don't necessarily have a lot of weight in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. So it can feel like you're spending a lot of time just doing a whole bunch of busy work. And I thought that coloring could be a wonderful busy nothing if you wanted it to be.
But the process, we had a piece of paper clipped to a kitchen cabinet and wrote ideas. So there were a number of Jane Austen quotes and Jane Austen sayings on this piece of paper that Kate would look at every time she cooked something.
Yeah, and we narrowed it down and decided that one. I think, I'm trying to remember what the other options were. It was like, I think one of them was a woman's expectation, and I think that was from Pride and Prejudice, and it was something to the effect of a woman's expectations jump from love to matrimony in a moment. I believe Mr. Bennet said it, and he was kind of making fun of his daughters for like constantly falling head over heels for these guys.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And then for Color the Bard, like I love the title of A Quick Succession of Busy Nothings, but it is quite long. So I was hoping to go for something a little bit shorter for the main title. And a lot of people call Shakespeare the Bard, because he's so iconic for being like one of the great playwrights of the English language, and also one who gave us a lot of fun words that we didn't have before, like moonbeam is a Shakespeare invention. So thank you, Shakespeare, for that one. Yeah, and I wanted to make it really clear exactly what it was. So what are you going to be doing? You're going to be coloring the bard. So named it Color the Bard. And then I played around a little bit more with the subtitle. So the subtitle is a coloring book featuring the Sonnets, Sound and Fury of William Shakespeare. So I figured people would enjoy the Sound and Fury quote getting tucked in there like a little Easter egg.
Is that from a play?
Yeah, I cannot remember which one right now, but
sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I feel like I should have the whole quote, but it's something to the effect of talking about how someone can have a whole lot of bluster, which is sound and fury signifying nothing. I want to say Macbeth. It might be Hamlet. I'm a bad Shakespeare fan right now, but most of the quotes that I know off by heart are Hamlet. As you know, a couple, and one from Romeo and Juliet. A couple times when we've had a few drinks together, I've decided to go into quoting Hamlet, because that's the only time I feel confident enough to do that. But I memorized a couple of soliloquies in college because I'm a nerd.
And if I remember correctly, you do a very good Scottish accent with them.
Yes, which would be more of a Macbeth thing, but yeah, I added that onto Hamlet, even though it's set in Denmark.
Well, I think because you had a post recently, or we had a post about David Tennant, who's Scottish and plays.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of tied it together with him, theoretically.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's confirmed. David Tennant is the one and only Hamlet, so it's okay that I do my Hamlet in Scottish.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, super fun. Yeah.
And so you mentioned that the page on the dress, you mentioned some cool facts about like how the dress was made and the different layers, particularly since you're into like historical costuming. So did you have to put in a lot of like historical research for the different pages of the book? Are there any other fun historical facts that you learned while researching the book?
Yeah, like this is my favorite time period as far as like English European history goes. I really love it. So I have a ton of books on Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots, which were kind of contemporary and or contemporaneous, I guess is the right word, and they were around for a lot of the same time as Shakespeare. So I've read a bunch of books about it. I've watched a show called Tudor Monastery Farm, which is a historian, Ruth Goodman, and two other guys who live as tutors for an entire year and work on a farm. So I know a bunch of stuff from that. I've read her book all about being a tutor, so I know a lot about like Tudor dress and Tudor lifestyle and all of that through just loving that in general. But a fun one I will show you. I guess I can do it here. One thing I didn't know that I found out in researching, I wanted to have a knife to go with one of the quotes for Julius Caesar, because Caesar gets stabbed. But a little Easter egg, I don't know if you can see this knife. This was a knife that was around at the Tudor period, and it is called a bollocks knife. And yes, bollocks in the, like,
Okay.
referring to the male anatomy, and it was kind of a, like a jokey thing that people did where the hilt is shaped as part of the male anatomy, and the point of the dagger would be the other part of the male anatomy. And it's a thing that people had, I think, a little bit earlier than the Tudor period as well, but it existed in the Tudor period, and that was just too fun of a thing, so I had to put that in the background. So if that looks a little bit suggestive or a little bit phallic,
It is.
that's what they intended, so that's in there. And I think this is based on an actual dagger that is on one of the Shakespeare Trust websites. I can't remember which one at the moment, but it's based on a real bollocks knife, so that's fun.
That's a crazy fact. My first thought is, why would anybody want to shape a knife after that? But then I guess also knowing most of history and the shapes that tend to come up over and over again, that makes sense. That's a really good fun fact. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And then I have one more that's less about the male anatomy, but you'll notice this little rose throughout a bunch of different images. It's a motif that I put in the coloring book kind of over and over, and that is the Tudor rose. So I know you don't watch Game of Thrones, but for those of you who did, that was based on the War of the Roses. So it's the two warring families, the Yorks and the Lancasters. And you'll notice that Lancaster sounds a lot like Lannister, and York kind of like Stark. So they're, in English history, they are two sides of like the extended family tree going back to the Plantagenets, I believe, which was like Richard the Lionheart, King John, the Robin Hood tale, that family, essentially. So it's two branches of that family tree, and they both kind of have claims to the English throne. So they fought it out, and each of them had a rose as a symbol. One was the white rose, one was the red rose. And so they eventually ended the war by having two sides marry. So I believe it was Henry and Elizabeth married and started the Tudor dynasty, and that's the Tudor rose. It has, you can't see in the coloring book, but it has red and white on it because the York and the Lancaster roses come together.
How did they pick the name Tudor? Sorry, now I'm getting into like really historical stuff. Did they just like pick that out of the hat? They were just like, we like this?
No, it was, I'm blanking right now. One of them is related to the name Tudor.
Okay, they kind of mutually agreed.
We have a post on Instagram that has more detail about where exactly that comes from. I'm a little fuzzy on the specifics, but there's the general picture. I haven't had enough tea yet today to remember that fact specifically.
That's fair. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot again. I get so wrapped up in like the interesting historical facts. I think another interesting historical fact that, so you're kind of offering as a Christmas special, this special Elizabethan Christmas page, which looks gorgeous, by the way. And I was surprised that there wasn't a Christmas tree in that. Is there a reason for that? Is that historically accurate? Did you just feel like it was complicated to do a Christmas tree?
No, it is historically accurate, and I learned this from watching. I told you guys about Tudor Monastery Farm. There's also a Victorian farm show, and they have a Christmas episode where they talk about the history of the Christmas tree, and that actually dates from the Victorian era because she married a German man, and the Christmas tree is a German tradition. Before that, in England, they would just use what they had on hand, which was generally speaking holly. So as you can see here, there's a bunch of holly garlands, and this is based on an image from a Tudor castle in the UK, and they did it all up in Tudor style for Christmas. And so you can also see oranges here with cloves. That was like a real highbrow thing in the Tudor era because citrus was very expensive to get imported, so it was like a sign of luxury. And the cloves and the citrus smell really good, so it's kind of a special thing that the wealthy would do. And I also, in researching this, I was looking for other Tudor traditions, and they had something, I believe it was called a kissing bow, which is also made of holly, and it's basically like you do two loops of holly, and they kind of go together to form a globe sort of thing. That would be a little hard to illustrate, so I didn't put it in there. But they would do that, and then I believe they would hang fruit in the middle, like sometimes a pear. I don't know exactly what the tradition behind that is, but that was a really interesting thing that I'd never seen before in relation to Tudor Christmas traditions. So
Yeah, and was it called a kissing? You said a kissing bow?
I think a kissing bow. I don't know. I should look that up and double check. But yeah, that was a cool
Did it
tradition.
say if it was called that because like it looked like the holly was kissing, or because you're supposed to kiss them? Like, I'm just wondering if that's like the precursor to mistletoe.
Ooh. Yeah, I assumed it was because the two of them looked like they were coming together and kissing, but yeah, it could be related to that tradition, and you could probably make it out of mistletoe too, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what? So you're giving that page away, I believe, for free on the website.
Yes. Yeah. All you have to do is go on our Instagram page or my Instagram page. We've got a link in there to the free coloring book page, or you can go to bit.ly/Elizabethan Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'd love it if you'd give the page a follow too, Calling Card Books page, because we're posting all sorts of fun stuff there. And whenever we do freebies and cool stuff, we always put it up on our Instagram or our Facebook page as well. So that's just facebook.com/callingcardbooks. And we'll post the link there too as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to kind of start off Christmas with some Elizabethan coloring.
Yeah, it's really fun. And there's also, in both of our links as well, I did a social distancing page. I should have printed it out. That's Jane Austen themed. So it's a picture of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and it says social distance like Lady Catherine de Bourgh is watching you, because she's kind of a stickler. And a lot of people were making the joke that suddenly they understand Jane Austen novels and the Regency, because you're not really supposed to touch the other gender, and everything's like very restricted. So now with all the social distancing guidelines, it's like, oh, we kind of understand why touching someone's hand is like, ooh.
This is weird.
Yeah, this is untoward.
I like that.
So that's a little fun freebie for everyone too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've done now. So you have Jane Austen. You have Shakespeare. What's your next coloring book? Where is your creations going next?
That is a great question, and I've been mulling that over. I'm not sure. So if anybody watching has a suggestion for which literary figure you would like to see done next, I'd love to hear it. I picked these two because I was an English major, so I read a ton of their works. I actually took courses specifically just on Jane Austen and just on Shakespeare. So like I learned a lot about the eras that they lived in and the things that informed their writing. So I feel like I know them pretty deeply. And I don't have other authors, classic authors that I know quite that well, but you and I talked about it a little bit. Oscar Wilde, he's real fun and real sassy, and he could be a really interesting one to do. I've thought about maybe doing the Brontes, because I like some of their work, and I'd love to get more female authors and like a little bit more diversity, because it really is easy with classic lit to just go for a lot of old dead men. But speaking of old dead men, Mark Twain could be a fun one. He's very sassy. Some of his stuff is, it's been a while since I've read all of Mark Twain, but he's got some that's a little not 2020 appropriate, but he also has a lot of insights onto the human condition that I appreciate. Although he hated Jane Austen, so
Did he?
maybe that he did. Yeah, he really did not like her work. Yeah, I don't know why he hated her so much, but
He was
yeah,
like way after her, right? I mean, not way, but
yeah, considerably. Like she was in the Regency period, so that was quite a bit before the Victorian era, and I think he was more Victorian era, which is
yeah. That's where I
I'm not the best
mentally
at
would
these.
put it as well. I think
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's okay. That's funny that he had any opinion on Jane Austen. But all right.
Yeah, he had a lot of opinions in general. Yeah. Oh, and another one is maybe Jonathan Swift, who did Gulliver's Travels and everyone's favorite, A Modest Proposal, about eating Irish children, as a commentary on how the English were treating the Irish. That could be really interesting to do, but I'd be intrigued to see what everyone has to say. And it's not in the literary theme, but there's a tiny part of me that just wants to illustrate a bunch of beautiful dresses like the one earlier. So I'm tempted to do like a historical dress throughout the ages, but that might be a little too niche. So we'll see.
But I think there are a group of people who really enjoy also coloring, because dresses are like kind of simple but beautiful to color.
Yeah,
I think there's a niche for that.
yeah. So maybe it doesn't. Oh yeah, the producer just gave me a little note. Another one we talked about, female and American, would be Louisa May Alcott.
Little Women, yes.
Yeah,
She has a Little Men too, so she's equal opportunity writer.
yeah. So that could be a great one. Laura Ingalls Wilder, who did Little House on the Prairie, could be good too. And then also Edgar Allan Poe. I thought about doing him too, because that could be like a real dark
Kind of creepy.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were in Richmond, Virginia, we went to one of his, I don't know if it was his birthplace or where he grew up, but that was real fun. Seeing his home.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is you're down for suggestions if anybody has any ideas of or strong opinions on who you should be doing a coloring for next.
Absolutely. Let the fandoms battle it out. Let us know which great literary hero I should illustrate next. And of course, for that, I would want to do the research, so I'd want to read or listen to audiobooks of their works.
Whoever.
So
Yeah, make sure you keep it true to their voice.
yeah, because I've read smatterings from each of those authors, but like these two I knew pretty in depth and had read Jane Austen, all of her major works, and most of the like juvenilia that she had kind of written but either hadn't finished or didn't publish as a book.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shakespeare, I had a goal as a kid to read all of his work. I don't think I have yet. There's some of the histories that I haven't, but I've read
he
or
has so
seen
many works.
so many.
Like, and I'm a reader.
Yeah.
I like reading a lot, but I just, oh my goodness, that man was prolific.
Extremely prolific. He was a upstart crow, as he was called by one of his fellow writers at the time. But he very similar to us, went through a pandemic, the Black Death, the Black Plague. So, you know, when you are in a quarantine, you make a lot of stuff. It just happens.
Yes, sourdough bread, knitting, crocheting. I've been seeing it all on the internet.
Yeah, you need something to fill your time. So whether it's making a coloring book or coloring a coloring book or creating, you know, the great canon of English literature.
Yeah.
Pandemic stuff. Yeah.
Share the story of our horse bet, Kate.
Oh, yeah. So this is Shakespeare adjacent. We have horses, and our veterinarian is on a quest to understand humanity and the human condition more. So he wants to read the works of Shakespeare to understand that. So he was looking for some recommendations as for which plays he should start with. And Yeah, and now's a great time for it because there's so many theater companies and Shakespeare-specific theater companies that are putting some or part of their plays on places like YouTube or live streaming them to raise funds and just to get some culture out there while we're all stuck at home. So there's been some wonderful productions from the globe that were on YouTube for free or for a donation. So it's truly a wonderful time to go back and watch some of Shakespeare's work or read some of Shakespeare's work.
Yeah, no time like the present with COVID.
Yeah,
Definitely.
seriously. Yeah. Stay home.
Sorry.
Oh, I just said stay home, everyone.
Stay home, be safe.
It's a mask-free activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And honestly, when you suggested this idea of coming on and chatting over coloring, I thought that sounds like a great social activity that we can do safely. So
yeah, it's kind of fun to do on Zoom or on video chat. I haven't done much because I've been jabbering the whole time, but I have colored in like 3 words.
I feel like I've been working a lot, but also I've gotten very little done. I just have 2 colors, so.
Okay, I've got to peek around the camera to see. Ooh, oh, I love that. That looks great.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
And you're using paints?
I am. Yeah, I'm using like these like poster paints because I had them out earlier today for a different project, so I thought, why not? So yeah, I'm very happy. I'm gonna be finishing it and pinning it up somewhere to remind myself that I should lower people's expectations so I can exceed them at some juncture.
So you can nail it. Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us? Is there anything else that you have that you feel like we need to appreciate in your beautiful book?
Yeah, let me see. I mean, if I had the cat around, I did make, it's a little bit after, it's kind of part of this time period, but more so the next generation. They wear these ruffs on their necks, so I made a small one for the cat because I was so inspired by looking at the source material for some of these photos. So that's a fun little side. It's not necessarily book related, but
no, but I think it's awesome to see, like, because you obviously have a passion for this era, a passion for like the clothes, the literature of of this time period, and so it's awesome to just see that it's not just someone kind of creating a book for the sake of earning money or whatever. You're actually really passionate about it. And that really comes out when you're talking about it and showing your ruffle.
Oh my God, he's here. Oh, my long-suffering little bean. I don't know if you've ever wanted to see a really unhappy cat in a Jacobean Elizabethan ruff, but here you go.
Boom.
We've named him Superstar because I put a photo of him on Instagram that got the most likes of anything I've ever gotten. He got like 2,000 likes, and usually I get like 20. So the internet really appreciated
that sounds
building
right.
patience. What a good boy.
Oh.
I feel so bad for him. He's a good boy. But I am kind of planning on making him a little jerkin maybe, which is like a leather vest that guys would wear. So he doesn't have to wear sleeves because I don't think he would love the sleeves. But he gets a little cold in the winter, so he could maybe use a tiny little Tudor era jacket.
Yeah, maybe when he gets used to the confinement of it, he'll actually enjoy the warmth.
Yeah, he actually, my mom knitted him a little sweater thing that he wears quite happily when it's cold in the winter.
Oh. Okay.
So he's already a little acclimatized. But yeah, back to favorite ones I haven't shown yet. I'm also a horse girl. So I did the A Horse, A Kingdom for My Horse from Richard III. And I love how it turned out. I'm just really pleased with the horse.
Yeah.
Kate is very critical. She's very critical of horse faces in art. So it was a fun thing to watch her challenge herself to make an acceptable horse face in a piece of line art.
There's another fun horse one. But yeah, it's really funny to look at kind of a little bit earlier than the Tudor era, but a lot of medieval art, they didn't really understand perspective yet. And they had hard time making animals look like animals, so a lot of the horses like have really crazy faces. Or there was one I saw recently of a horse that was straight on, and it was just basically a circle with like a head. They didn't understand how to do the front on perspective, which is just beautiful.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a complicated animal to nail, I guess, down in art.
Yeah.
So that must, how long did that one take you? Longer than other pages would have, or did you feel like you were able to get it more quickly with your superior tools?
Yeah, it went pretty quick with the superior, and there's not a ton of detail. Like the mane took a long time because I had to draw in all of the lines of the different hairs individually and all the little ends. So that took a while, but the rest of it came together pretty quickly. But I want to show you another one I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
This is Hampton Court Palace. So this is, it used to be the home of Cardinal Wolsey, which was one of the top church officials of the Catholic Church during Henry VIII's reign. And it was too grand, so Henry eventually took it from him and made it his own castle. And I went to visit, so this is based on a picture I took. But there's a ton of detail, and then also, I know I was just bagging on the medieval people for being bad at drawing animal faces, but I don't know if you can see the little gargoyle and his little screaming face, but I really appreciate how that turned out.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a fun one. I love all the detail of that page. And that's a fun Easter egg, the screaming dragon gargoyle fella. Oh, and then, okay, one last one that I love. The uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. And I just love the detail that came off on this crown.
I almost
and it was a lot of,
chose that one because I thought, like, I just looked at it and I was like, this is so beautiful.
yeah, it's incredible. And like it was another one where I relied heavily on like going really, really detail heavy on like one of the gems and then kind of like multiplying it around, or like doing a pattern. Like this is a pattern. I made a handful of little buttons and then connected it all so it could be turned into lines.
Okay.
But I just love how it turned out. And then the ones that are like kind of at an angle, it was really tricky to get them to be at the right angle to like show that the crown is circular. But I love the way it turned out, and I love that it came across the way I intended, because that doesn't always happen with art, as we know from the medieval period.
Yes, absolutely. As we know from all of the horse heads throughout human history.
Yeah. This is kind of unrelated, but back in 2016, I traveled around Europe a little bit, and one of my favorite things was going to museums and trying to find like the weirdest animal faces anywhere. And there was one picture that's kind of famous, where it's very strange. There's like a very angry cat, but then in the background there's like 3 people having dinner, and they're all kind of like staring at the viewer as if they're really offended. And one of the girls is just wearing like a tablecloth, like a napkin on her head for whatever reason. I'm sure it's not a napkin. I'm sure it's, you know, some sort of important head covering, but nobody else is wearing it, and it just looks like she put a napkin on her head, and everyone's really pissed off that you're looking at her. And then there's an angry cat in the corner, and it's just beautiful.
That sounds lovely. What museum did you see that in?
I think it was in, I want to say Amsterdam, but I went to the Van Gogh Museum there, so probably not. But yeah, it was in a national gallery of one of the places I went to. It might have been in Denmark, in Copenhagen. Yeah. Okay. I guess that's a good problem to say that I've been to too many national galleries in Europe. I'll take that.
Too many. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
On a related note to that, I think that exists a lot in art, and the comedian Hannah Gadsby really talks about the ridiculousness of many paintings in her comedy, and it's really funny. And I think, yeah, animals in paintings are definitely great.
It's wonderful, yeah. I encourage the viewer the next time you go to a museum, find all the weird animal faces, and if it's allowed, take pictures of them and remember those weird animal faces, because
just
that's my best trope in artwork.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much for showing the book to us and for the coloring session.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful interview. I was excited to get to talk about my babies.
Yeah, so I know we mentioned that the book is up, or sorry, not the book, the free page is up on the links for both of our bios right now. If somebody wanted to purchase the book, where would they go about doing that? Is that in the same place?
Yeah, so those are in the links as well. You can also go to callandcard.com/shop, and you can check out all of our wide variety of books, including these two. Yeah, and they're wonderful gift for the holidays. We still shipping is a little slow everywhere, but it should be still be plenty of time for orders in the U.S. International, I think that might take a little bit.
Yeah.
And we also do group discounts. So if there's anybody, especially if there's teachers or if there's any theater groups or theater companies that focus on Shakespeare, we would love to do discounted bulk orders for any of these. So
yeah,
that is something we can do.
This would be such a great gift actually for like a theater, somebody who's really into like Shakespeare theater stuff.
Yeah,
I can see that, and Christmas is coming up, so that's a very, very timely release of this.
yeah, and we'd love to do more. I mean, I didn't do very much coloring on camera, but we'd love to do more live coloring events with people, especially if there's anybody who would be interested in doing a Shakespeare or Jane Austen coloring party.
Yeah.
We're here. Send us a DM.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just getting started on the clouds. I'm going to show really fast before we hang up because I like it. I'm very proud.
Ah, I love it. I love the sun.
I love this. This is
Beautiful.
I'm going to hang this up in my office area. So thank you so much for this beautiful page and the lovely interview. It's been so great just learning about the inspiration behind it, because I think a lot of times we see these sorts of books and we just assume, like we don't realize like what the story is or how it was made and how much love was put into the pages. So it's really great to hear about that.
Yeah, it's wonderful to give people a peek behind the curtain and talk about it, because I do love it so much. And thank you for the wonderful interview. It's fun being on this side because I did some interviewing before for Power of Storytime, and that's a lot. You really have to prepare. So thank you for all the work you did.
Absolutely. I will talk to you soon. If anybody is interested in following Kate, so she's at CCB Creative, and she's the creative director of Calling Card Books. And of course, as we mentioned, please follow our page here at CCB Power of Story.